Join us today for an action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball, where we discuss way too early outfield rankings, part 2, heading into 2024.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Sports Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino. You can find me on Twitter at DomMartinoFB. Here, as always, with my brother, my co-host, my partner in crime, Matthew Ane, and you can find him on Twitter at Matthew_Ane. If you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you could, do that for us. Helps the podcast grow, especially this time of year if you're listening. And if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit the little bell below. It subscribes you to the channel and also gives you a notification every time we drop a new episode. And lastly, real quick, guys, I want to throw it out there again. You could sign up for us on Subtext. Matt and I are getting into our rankings. Probably going to be dropping our maybe top 10, top 15 in each position sooner than later. If you guys got dynasty questions, keeper questions, join us on Subtext. We're responding right away. Matt and I are really getting into the role of, fantasy baseball stuff here. So make sure you check us out on Subtext. With that being said, guys, before we get into our part 2 of the outfielder, way too early ranking / review from last year, we have some breaking news that we want to talk about on the podcast today that revolves around 2 outfielders. Matt, why don't you take the lead here with this one, brother?
All right. So let's talk about Jared Kelenic being traded over to the Atlanta Braves. I like the trade, especially for the Braves. They just got more and more dangerous. And I feel like he's going to benefit from not only being in a really stellar lineup, but also to going to learn from some young studs there. He has a lot of opportunity to grow there and also to just be that guy. Now, you're probably like, oh, why do you like that? He kind of fell off. He kind of pulled an Amari Stoudemire and kicked an inanimate object and hurt himself. But, ultimately, he had a good season when he was healthy this year. And 372 at-bats. He had 44 runs, 25 bombs, 2 triples, 11 bombs, 49 ribs, 13 stolen bases, 41 walks to 132 strikeouts, and batted .253. Now, those year-end numbers for the back end of the stats I just read off really really don't describe his season. In April and May, he really went on a tear and was okay, he's here. We're going to see something special, especially in April. In April, it was monstrous. He had 7 home runs in that month. So through 91 at bats, he had 14 runs, 7 doubles, 7 bombs, 14 ribs, 5 stolen bases, and he was batting about 308. Stellar numbers right there. Even when his batting average took a little kick in the nads at 250 in May, he still had a good month. He had 104 at bats. He had 13 runs, 7 doubles, a triple, 3 bombs, 12 ribs, 2 stolen bases with the 250 batting average. From there, it was kind of downhill. He couldn't really get himself, right, and was hurt for a good chunk of the season. Came back, had good batting average but the batting average looked nothing like April, and the counting stats weren't there. The ribbies were, and the runs were for sure, but it just everything else kind of didn't fall into place. And it was an up and down season with him, in that regards. But I look at Kelenic and I go, okay, what's his upside for next year? If he could put together, let's say half of what he did in April, right? Half the home runs, 3.5. He had 275 batting average, and the runs and ribbies pretty much stayed the same, and was able to get a good production from the stolen base category. We're able to extrapolate that over a whole season, where each month he's getting 3.5 home runs, right? So that's 5 months of baseball, 15. No, I think it could hit the 20 to 25 mark, so maybe a little bit more. And Kelenic could just go in and then have the ribbies and run production from that lineup. He's going to hit lower in that, but that lineup is stacked the whole way through. we could see some true production from Kelenic and be very viable. I don't know where I'm going to rank him yet, but I would say a top 40 or 50 outfielder for sure now versus where I had him on Seattle with a little bit more question marks. This is just flies him up just based off of the surroundings that's going to allow him to produce a lot more than being on Seattle.
Yeah, Matt, I'm just going to literally, take that, what you just said, as a jumping off point. Seattle, literally, when you talk about park factor, was the 31st last park when it comes to park factor. So it was the worst park for any hitter to hit in. And that's where, Jared Kelenic was playing, half of his games. Now he goes to Atlanta, 11th best park to hit in. So that's a huge difference when you're talking about park. And then when you talk about team as well, you're putting him in my opinion, the best lineup in baseball going into the 2024 season. Matt, you did say he's probably going to be hitting pretty low. Roster Resource has him right now slotted as the number 8 hitter. But you know what? That goes back to the top where, Acuna, Albies, and Riley are driving you in. And guess what? If this lineup has any, credence on Roster Resource right now, you have Ozuna, Harris, Murphy hitting in front of you. So the RBIs and the runs are going to be legit. The power, as you talked about, is very, very good. 25 homers is not out of the question. I don't think 25 steals is out of the question either. And don't forget, Jared Kelenic only going to be 24. I know a lot of people are fatigued on him, and then even if you had him this year before he, decided to, kick stuff and break his foot and, just throw a tantrum and get hurt, he looked pretty strong. Matt read you off those numbers from the beginning of the year. I have Kelenic as my 47th outfielder. When we're looking at NFBC ADP is what we've been using as we're doing these shows. 73 drafts so far. Kelenic, 50th outfielder off the board, pick 228. But I think that's going to fly up with this news of him moving over to Atlanta. Let's talk about one more outfielder, thing here. News that just happened. Jackson Chourio signed, I believe it was an 8-year, $82 million deal. Took the, record away from Luis Robert with somebody that has no MLB experience. Biggest deal. 19 years old for Jackson Chourio. I mean, the word on the street is he's going to get the opening day nod. If you're not familiar with Jackson Chourio, well, let me get you acquainted with him. 5'11", 165, righty outfielder for the Milwaukee Brewers. Say, Dom, that's not one of those big baseball guys that you and Matt like to talk about, but you know what? The guy gets the job done. 128 games for Chourio in the minors last year, 531 at-bats, 88 runs, 26 doubles, 3 triples, 22 homers, 91 RBIs, 44 steals, 283 batting average. This is a potential 5-tool guy. I think the upside is a rookie season that we saw out of a Julio and a Bobby Witt. It's the caliber of player is there. I moved Chourio all the way up to 29 at my outfield rankings, and that's once again assuming he's getting the nod for opening day. That's going to fluctuate. If he looks bad in spring training, he's not going to make the team. Obviously, that flies way down. If he looks fantastic and he's just tearing the cover off the ball, I could see it jumping up a few spots. But Jackson Chourio, definitely a name you're going to want to familiarize yourself with if you don't know who he is going into opening day.
Yep. I like everything you said. The Cheerios, good for your heart. It's going to be good for your fantasy lineup too, I'm going to say. Not to be punny, no pun intended, but it was too easy, low-bearing fruit here. But anyway, I like Chourio. I don't know where I'm going to have him yet in my rankings. I'm still trying to, work that out before, I start saying where I'm going to have him, since we just got the news maybe like a day or two ago. But ultimately, the impact on fantasy lineups this year are going to be fun. Dynasty leagues, you're salivating for next season because that's just a giant boost. And in redrafts, it's going to be interesting to see where he is, where his ADP falls, and if the fantasy community as a whole kind of sleeps on him because he's unproven. We're going to be the ones telling you need to draft him and kind of take advantage of the low ranking. We shall see.
Matt, I'm going to make you and the fans laugh real quick because I think you're about to ask me the question. ADP, right?
Yeah.
Is that we're going 51st outfielder right behind Mr. Jared Kelenic, pick 235. So that's only going to fly up. Well, that's only going to get higher from here.
Well, we'll do a temperature check because that just landed,
Yes.
and I guarantee like 10 more drafts go on, and then that's going to
Mhm.
change. And before we move on, we start talking about all these big names and everything else under the sun. We have a sponsor we need to talk about.
And guys, we are here today talking to you about Jace Medical. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we just talk for a minute about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. This is scary. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if any of my loved ones, or Matt could attest to, his kids, got sick while there's a supply chain issue, and it kept them from these life-saving medication that they needed. Thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jace Medical. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illness, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinitis, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to any of us. So visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jacemedical.com and use the offer code locked on to get $20 off your order today. And guys, real quick, before we just move on, I need to talk to you about something Locked On has done. They've launched the first ever sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's called Locked On Sports Today, and it's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus your national shows covering every league. You go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Whew. All right, that's a lot for me. All right, guys. So before I pass this off to Matt, just a quick refresher. Last time we kind of started from the bottom up when we were talking about outfielder. So now we're going to talk about this top tier of outfield and what Matt and I think about them, where we have them ranked, and what we think about ADP so far for next year. But Matt, I think this one guy we have to do our due diligence on, right?
Yeah, I mean, let's just talk about him, get it out of the way, and it'll be quicker because there's not much you really can say that's in the negative point or where else you're drafting him, and that's Ronald Acuna. I think my explanation will be long. My joke and tease will be longer than my talk about Ronald Acuna. But ultimately, fantastic season. Without a doubt, he's going to be the number one pick in all of fantasy baseball drafts. Like, it is what it is. Dude had 72 steals last year and over 40 bombs. Like, let's go. And I'm not going to say he's going to have 70 stolen bases next year. Like, it's very hard to repeat a season like that, but he's going to get close. He's going to be astronomical and worth every single pick that you had at one. So, Ronald Acuna, tier of his own, man after my own heart, Ronald Acuna.
Yeah, Matt, well said. Honestly, I don't even think I'm going to add anything besides the consensus number first pick in fantasy baseball. We haven't had that, I want to say, since going back maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago with Mike Trout. Yeah, that's the last time I remember a consensus guy. And shout out to Ronald Acuna, brought home a lot of people fantasy championships, including myself. But let's move on to somebody who's a little bit more interesting than Acuna. Acuna is very interesting, but this guy for fantasy baseball, very interesting. Let's talk about Corbin Carroll. Now, Corbin Carroll, monster rookie of the year campaign, helped bring those Diamondbacks to the World Series. At 22 years old, Corbin Carroll, 155 games, 565 at-bats, 116 runs, 30 doubles, 10 triples, 25 homers, 76 RBIs, 54 steals, and a 285 batting average. I think we only go up from here with Corbin Carroll. The only one knock I can give Corbin Carroll was that shoulder issue that popped up twice, towards the end of the season. And, he still did play, quite a bit after that. So it doesn't look like it's going to be an issue. But, the way they described it a few times, you really thought Corbin Carroll wasn't going to play again all season. Other than that, I mean, the guy's coming off the board. Number 3 outfielder, pick number 4 overall. I'm completely fine with that. Look at the step forward Julio and Bobby Witt took this year. I think Corbin Carroll does the same. I moved Corbin Carroll up to my number 4 outfielder, right behind Acuna, Betts, and Julio. Honestly, if you want to argue Mookie Betts with me, I'm not even going to, give you a hard time with that one, because I think, honestly, after Acuna, those next 3 are interchangeable, and then even Kyle Tucker is right there with them in my mind. But Corbin Carroll, shout out to him, another huge name for fantasy baseball.
Yeah, no, Corbin Carroll is interesting. I have as my number 6 outfielder right behind Kyle Tucker, funny enough. I just actually 2 behind. I have Fernando Tatis in front of him as well. But I just there's certain things that I just want to see Corbin Carroll do it again. Not that I'm not believing in it, not that he can't be in the same discussion as Ronald Acuna. It's just, drafting these young players so early in especially with your first round pick, or
Yeah.
especially first 5 to 7 picks, you need to nail it, because you have a long wait period before your pick comes back to you to kind of back that pick up. And I kind of want to go with a little bit more security. And Corbin Carroll's a little bit more volatile, and his finish could be not first round worthy, where you passed up on other names that are a little bit more consistent and have done it for a few years. So that's a conservative approach I would take when thinking about drafting Corbin Carroll. Anything after 7, like 8 to 12, 14, it's kind of okay. Okay, your pick is coming back much sooner. 6 is kind of even a little risque. And 7 too, it's just, you got a little ways to go. So the tier of player you're going to get on that return is going to be a little bit tighter. So just keep that in mind when drafting Corbin Carroll early. But I want to move on, and I want to talk about somebody that's going to have some great fluctuation in my rankings depending on what happens in this offseason, since there's a lot of trade rumors about him. That's Juan Soto. Juan Soto has been in so many talks of trading and things like that, where it's kind of scaring me in terms of just fantasy relevance, right? Juan Soto didn't handle his first year well when being moved from Washington over to the Padres, now moving again for the 3rd time in a couple years, just not great. So, depending on the landing spot and depending on, what he has to do for himself, it's going to affect it. Right now, as present, if he's still on the Padres, he's my number 8 outfielder, probably, the lower end of the first round for me. And, kind of just going to be somebody that is going to be a wait and see. I feel if he does get traded, he's probably going to fall outside of my top 12, if not 12, just based off of the
Even
fact.
if it's a good landing spot, Matt.
The only way I think I would have him, be in
What if he
my
goes to play with the Yankees, Yankee Stadium?
still the move across country, and playing in Yankee Stadium alone is a lot more intimidating than people really acknowledge. So the pressure is going to get to him. Clearly it already has during the move, and I feel like he'll be a great year 2 player on the Yankees, but I could be wrong. But still, the only way I'd probably keep him where he is, if not give him a boost, if he somehow ends up on the Reds. So because then you're in Great American Hitter Park, and then it's all day, and he'll probably hit about 40, 50 home runs. But, if he ends up on the Yankees, yes, great lineup. But even too, they have their struggles as well, especially without the Martian. So it's not the most comfortable pick when I'm picking him in the first round at that point, if he moves on from this team, because of the mentality of him moving on. But go ahead. I'm done. I'm done with the Juan Soto.
Yeah, no, it's so funny because hearing you talk about him, you don't sound as excited as I'm about to sound, but meanwhile you have him ranked 8th at outfield and I have him ranked 10th. So it's just ironic that I'm gonna preach the good side and you kind of preach the potential downside here with Soto. I think we're all underrating Juan Soto at this point in his career. The kid's still only going to be 25. Life is already hard, but imagine having all this pressure on you. You're coming up through the wings of baseball, and they're already talking about you as a potential Hall of Famer. Juan Soto just had a bunch of monster seasons as he was coming up. Last couple of years, not so great. But it happens. Life, as Matt and I always talk about, moving teams, then playing for, a Washington team that went competing for a World Series to, being the joke of the MLB, isn't easy. It isn't easy to wake up and play games you're not motivated for. It's not easy to move, to a new team, move your family and get adjusted and all that stuff. Juan Soto finally settled in San Diego, had a pretty strong year, 97 runs, 35 homers, 109 RBIs, even stole 12 bases, 275 batting average. I think Juan Soto is going to have more seasons where he hits 300 with 30 plus homers and 100 and 100 and chip in some steals as well. I have Juan Soto as my number 10 outfielder, as I mentioned. I'm not mad at you if you're taking him in the first round. I think he's a great wheel pick that you pair with a nice steals guy. You make sure it'd be crazy, honestly, if you could get oh no, that's probably not going to work out. But if you can get you a nice steals guy to pair with Soto, I think that's exactly how you do it. Soto still hits the ball as hard as ever. He's not super slow. He's not quick, so he's not going to steal you a crazy amount of bases. But I just think he's got every tool in the book down pat. I love Juan Soto. I think he's going to be in for a monster year. Don't be afraid to draft him in the first round, honestly. Go ahead, brother.
All right. And before we move on and we finish this up, wrap the rest of this episode up in this last half, we have one last sponsor for you. All right, Dom, take it away.
All right, so let's talk about this next guy here. Another you have a lot of polarizing players when it comes to the top of outfield because it's very top heavy. I'm talking about Aaron Judge. Now, I've seen a lot of, people talking like, oh, Aaron Judge was, a top 3 pick coming into the season, and now he's outside of, the top 5. I mean, by every right, though, kind of. And I'm wearing my Aaron Judge jersey. If you don't know, Matt and I, we're from New York. We both love the Yankees, and I'm a huge Aaron Judge fan. It's just that all of the guys ahead of him are going to contribute a lot in the steals department and give you 30, 40 homer with 100 and 100 upside, right? So the thing with Judge is he did have that kind of outlier season, a couple of years ago where he stole, 16 bases when he hit the 62 home runs. I don't know if we're ever going to see him get that high at steals again. I wouldn't be surprised in a full season if he got just 7 or 8 steals. So that's really where the difference is here. So when it comes to a guy like Judge, obviously 37 home runs in 106 games this past season, that 60 number is always on the table for Judge. I'll never not say that he can't hit 60 home runs because he's done it. He's shown he can do it. He can do it again. 100 and 100, of course. A strong batting average, of course. He's a 282 career guy. Just another dude that if you're going to take him in the first round, towards the end there, make sure you're focusing on your steals for the rest of the draft. Because these elite steal guys, they go very quickly. And then after, the elite ones go, you really just got, Esther Ruiz down there and CJ Abrams at some point as well. But I love Aaron Judge, just besides the foot issue where, he ran into a wall trying to make a play. It's not like, his body's breaking down on him yet. He is a big boy. Matt and I have had plenty of debates on him. I love him. I have him as my number 7 outfielder. He's coming off the board in NFBC ADP right now, 7th outfielder, pick 12. I love that. I think that's a great spot to get Aaron Judge.
I guess I'm not getting him in any drafts because I have him as my number 10 outfielder. My reasoning is this, right? Now, Aaron Judge, I love him. He's a great player. It's just I don't know if he's going to just be able to stay on the field. Even though you look at his career and you're like, Matt, you're crazy. He's only had about 1, 2, 3 games, not including 3 years, not including COVID, where he played, under 400 at bat, under 500 at bats. But the thing is, he gets hurt for little chunks, and it's usually in the important parts of the season. Last year, he was healthy for the playoffs, which is great. He actually helped you get across the field, the goal line. But on that off chance that he's not, and he decides not to play through injury, that's where you're just like, okay, dude, like I put my hands up and I go, okay, my season's hurt, especially if he's not there at the end of the season. I treat him where I have to draft him in the top 10. Period. Like he's a first round pick or early second round pick. Like at the bottom of the swing pick, it's where if he's there, I'm taking him no matter what. But at the same time, I could go with everybody else above him based off of just safety. Dom says it's because of stolen bases that he's a little lower. I think personally with the increase of the bag sizes that there's so many guys that didn't steal more than like 4 or 5 are now at 10, 11, 12 for a season. You can draft those guys and you could chip away at a spread of better, 4 categories and still be able to chip in a win in the stolen base category every single week because it's now being just spreading the wealth. Yes, those super elite guys are now at a whole nother level, but at the same time, I can now draft 6 guys that chip in 12 and I have just as many stolen bases as you at the end of the year. So, you know, it's not as valuable to just draft one of these super stolen base niche guys. It's nice to have the 5 category guys, but not a necessity anymore. But anyway, I'm going to move on. I'm going to digress. I'm going to just, leave you with that and move on. We're going to talk about Luis Robert. Somebody I called this season, somebody I'm very happy to draft next year. I have him as my number 7 outfielder going into this year, and I'm very excited for it. I feel very comfortable going into next year with him in the first round, just based off of the fact that I just expect a lot from him and pray that the team can take a step forward. It's the only thing that kind of holds him back and why I could possibly see him falling in the rankings. But if you look at his stats on the season, you really can't get mad at anything but his ribbies. So in 546 at bats, he had 90 runs, 36 doubles, a triple, 38 bombs, 80 ribs, 20 stolen bases, and had a batting average of 264, which I know he's a lot better than that. And it was a down year, and he's probably more like a 285 hitter, 290 hitter. So if that rises, and if, I don't know, Eloy Jimenez can somehow just decide to stay healthy for, 480 at bats, Luis Roberts is going to benefit from that. The other guys on that team, like, I don't know, Tim Anderson, right? He got traded, right? He got moved.
I don't know. I think he's a free agent. I don't know if he officially signed yet. I'm not sure.
Okay. If Tim Anderson returns, fact check me, hit in the comments if I'm wrong, and he decides to bounce back. Boom, that's another bonus. Oscar Colas decides to figure it out in year 2 in the bigs. That's another bonus. If Andrew Vaughn decides to even do, sorry for my child in the back, 30% of what we expect, he will benefit and the ribbies will run, and then he'll be worth this pick. So like Luis Roberts, you're probably going to get at a discount this year, and it'll probably be the cheapest you're going to get him for the next 5 years. Luis Roberts has a lot of upside, and how old is he right now? Still only 25. There's a whole nother level in his game.
Yeah, man, you're not wrong. Actually, even after looking everything over and, having this conversation, I might switch him with Aaron Judge. I have Luis Robert at 8, Aaron Judge at 7. Luis Roberts coming off the board is the 10th outfielder right now, pick 28. I think that's a bargain. And Matt, I kind of just agree with everything you said. Luis Roberts fast. He's very quick. That 20 steals that he had this past year could easily be 30, 35, even 40. That's how fast he actually is. He's, I believe, when you're talking about sprint speed, he's in the 84th percentile, which is, very, very good. That's almost elite. The power is legit. He hits the ball super, super hard. 40 home runs, not out of the question. He 38 this past year. The county stats is going to just based on this, how good the Chicago White Sox team is. As Matt said, this is a guy that hit over 300 a bunch of times in the minors. So the batting average has potential to grow as well as a career 280 guy. This is a guy that, yeah, Matt, we agree. I feel like I'm just repeating everything you said, but just because I'm drooling myself, I love Luis Robert. Let's see if I can sneak this last guy in a tiny, tiny bit about him. You're talking about, outfield. We got to talk about Jazz now. Jazz, another polarizing guy, super fast, hits the ball hard, super flashy player. Just can he stay healthy? If Jazz can stay healthy, easily 30-30 type of guy. The Marlins team that's starting to put it together, so I think the runs and the RBIs can be good as well. Batting average, I'm never really expecting Jazz to hit over 250, to be honest with you. But a guy that can go 30-30, 100-100, and 250, I think that's great. I have Jazz as my number 20 outfielder heading into next year. Let's see where NFBC ADP has him as 16th outfielder, pick 64. Love Jazz, though. I think there's a lot of upside there. Just a very, very risky pick.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, here's my thing on Jazz. I think he's losing second base eligibility.
Yes, he is. It's only going to be outfield.
And with that being said, like, he has no longer is valuable for me. I don't think he's going to finish where ADP has him. I have him at 28, like, at the outfield position. Like, it's not there for me. He's not an outfielder. He's not a prototypical outfielder for me. Yes, 30-30 is an upside, but he hasn't been able to do it in the past. Bless you. And for him to be able to do this in the outfield spot, there's too much risk for me. I'm gonna go and pick a guy that has, more consistency, a better floor, and not go with somebody so volatile versus if he was at second base. That's where that value has always been for me and why I love Jazz so much. So right there and then I'm kind of like out. He's kind of like a do not draft unless he falls to a nice value, which clearly based off of ADP, I'm never going to have this dude on a single team of mine. So, I'm just out.
Damn, and as we wrap things up here, I'm kind of shocked. Matt has lost all love for Jazz Chism. But with that being said, guys, that's all for today. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. Thank you for being Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your first listen each and every day. Look out for a new episode tomorrow. We start talking about starting pitchers. But until then, see you.
Peace.